Welcome to Better Fishing with Two Bald Biologists, a podcast from the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. We're your hosts, Corey Oakley and Ben Ricks, two bald guys who happen to be fish biologists and avid fishermen. We hope the information that you learn in this podcast will help you think like a fish and become better fishermen. Well, welcome back, guys, to another edition of Better Fishing with Two Bald Biologists. Ben, how you doing?
This is exciting. Like, super excited. We have tried to do this podcast.
This has been a success. Not for me, but for you. It's been a success, so I'm pumped.
We have labored over this.
Oh, my word.
This is the second time.
The second time.
We talked about this conceptually about a year ago.
Yeah, we had Powell on. Hey, Powell. Hey.
In a figurative world, this is what we know.
In a figurative world, we talked about the species walleye in North Carolina. In a figurative world, we talked about it.
We caught 0 of them.
We caught 0 of them. It was tough. We struggled.
Well, to be honest, let's take a step back. We went to catch stripers, and we tried to dabble in the walleye
We were like,
world.
we can kill 2 birds with one stone, and we didn't. Well, we had a podcast, but it was not, did not discover the joy of walleyes in Western North Carolina while we were there. We just talked about it.
All right, so we've jumped way ahead.
And I have yet to discover the joys of walleye in North Carolina.
He just went ahead and owned it before I could deliver.
I don't know. We'll get into it later on. What'd you say before we get started?
Well, I mean, we're jumping neck deep mid-conversation in this podcast, which I guess is cool.
That's fine. That's what we do.
You know, so, I mean, if you listen to the Yellow Perch podcast.
Get the right species.
Yeah. Some sort of perch podcast.
Yes.
Then you know, and if you listen to the Lake Appalachia Brown Trout or the Lake Hiwassee podcast, you know about the arduous adventure that it is to drive
all that way
from New Bern to way past Murphy and still be in North Carolina. So
yep.
I've said it every time. I'm going to say it one last time because we probably won't ever go there for the podcast again. Our fuel budget won't allow it.
That's right. That's right.
Tip of the cap to the North Carolina DOT for making all these roads. I had no idea you could drive that far and still be in this fine state.
That's right. It's a long ways out there.
Mm-hmm.
In case you haven't listened to any of our podcasts, this is the first one. It's a long ways. For coastal guys, well, I'm not in the coast now, but I grew up on the coast. For coastal guys, we didn't even know it existed in North Carolina. We thought it was Georgia or Tennessee.
Right. I thought if you drove that far west, you would get to see
I thought it'd be Mississippi.
Or the Rocky Mountains.
Or the Rocky Mountains, for that matter.
No clue.
No, it's not. It's still North Carolina.
No, yeah, it's a long way.
Long way.
Long way. And so we've got Powell on again, our District 9 fisheries biologist. Powell, tell everybody, hey.
Hey, everyone.
Give us a fun fact about Powell Wheeler.
Oh, I got fun facts if he doesn't.
Any. Doesn't even have to be fish related.
You've been here enough now. This is your 3rd or 4th one, so.
I have weird hobbies.
That's what I want.
Yeah, bring it.
That's what I want.
What's the weird hobbies, Powell?
So I am into fountain pens, and I collect physical media, so CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, and that's probably enough to get
He
started.
didn't bring up the typewriters.
He collects typewriters?
Yeah. Well, that was, so during COVID.
That was a phase. You're out of that now?
Now I'm a user, not a collector. So anything analog or physical media is my kind of thing. So
I know what he's against now. He's against technology. That's what he's against.
That's exactly right. And no surveillance in my house. My pens and my typewriters don't keep notes on me. No, I got into typewriters during COVID. It was a nice COVID hobby. So you could just buy stuff on eBay and have it shipped to the house when you couldn't leave.
And so you thought, I should collect typewriters.
Yeah, I learned all about typewriters. And I still cruise antique malls because you just never know. But we've got every square inch under the bed is a typewriter. We've got closets full of typewriters. We're going to, you have to kind of try them all to find the one that's really for you. And so I found the ones that are for me, and then we got a bunch of extra ones that weren't for me that I got, because I didn't know that yet. So
off air, we had a discussion about fishing reels and that. So, maybe typewriters got the right feel, so it works.
Yeah, it's the same. Mechanics.
We've got our staff very diverse. We've got folks that collect typewriters. We got folks that, teach English as a foreign language. We've got folks that
Woodworkers.
We got folks that make lightsabers.
We got it all.
We got a carp fisherman. We got folks that fish a bunch. I mean, we got
it all.
We got it all. It's great.
Well, thanks for sharing, pal. We
my
enjoy
pleasure.
that about you for sure.
So we went for one final podcast appearance.
Yeah.
For our, white elephant, so to speak, or white buffalo.
White buffalo, I think is what it is.
It felt like a white elephant there for a little bit. We really wanted to do a walleye podcast. We have been asked multiple times, can you talk about walleye fishing?
And we have a partnership with Carolina All Out, which is a TV show here in North Carolina that's run by Chris Douglas. And we've been trying to get walleye on that TV show forever and a day. This has been like Chris and I, we've been trying to get that fishery on footage, on film. And so when we went out there, Chris went out with us and did, you can see Carolina All Out. You can see a striper show at Lake Hiwassee a year ago on that. And Chris was like, let's tackle it one more time. So I was like, sure, let's do it one more time. Now I want to set the stage because we asked our buddy Don Latoul. We asked our buddy Don,
retired game warden, fisheries expert, guides.
when is the right time to go? And Don's like, hey, here's the times. Times are the full moon in March, the full moon in April. Okay. We look at our calendars. March is out. We're just like, we were looking at our calendar. There's just no way March was going to work.
March was a train wreck.
March was a train wreck for us here at the Wildlife Commission, at least in the fish division. And so we set up the only time in April that we could go, which was, I believe, about a week short of the full moon.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we set this up, we didn't realize that we were going to be in a world-class drought.
Had no clue.
And that the growing season was a month ahead of schedule.
That's where I was going. We had no clue that it wasn't going to rain for 6 months prior to us going. It was not that much, but had no clue.
Felt
of that.
like it.
Felt like that. And we had no clue that it was going to be so hot. It was 90 degrees in March. Those walleyes were on the spawning grounds. They were cooking, And so we show up for this walleye show. Don's like, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, we're going to have to get creative, I think is what he said.
Yeah, we're going to have to get creative. I was like, that's great, Don. We're back again. We've driven, halfway across Antarctica to be with you one more time. And you're now telling us that it's going to be tough. It's like, great.
But he did, I will say this for Don, and Powell knows him, he did everything in his power.
Everything.
We tried all the things.
We did.
So I will also say this. We were, to get into the objective. The objective was we were going to wade
fish in the rivers.
You guys know that I have a history of mountain wading that is rocky at best.
Ooh.
And I actually was like, hey, I'm going to do this again. I can't make the same mistakes all over again because
we're making new mistakes.
I need to make new mistakes, which we did. We scheduled a, walleye fishing trip during the drought. But I talked to one of our trout biologists. I was like, I want the same waders you wear in the same water you stand in. And he said, I'll do it. So I actually had a pair of fine waders.
They were nice. Your wading boots were nice.
My soles didn't float away.
Your equipment maintained.
Yes. So
you did well. I was proud of you.
Just so you guys know,
you may never get in those waders again.
I didn't tear anything up. Actually, we forgot to mention this. I broke one of Corey's rods during the Yellow Perch podcast, which was also the same trip. So there's that. I did that. So I can't believe we forgot to mention that.
Yeah. He walks to the front of the boat and there it went.
Yep.
It's not a fishing trip with us if we don't break a rod.
True.
It's just the truth.
So to get back on task, we were wade fishing and we wade fish spot after spot after spot after spot. And
the days marched on.
If you were a fisherman and you've done this at it was that vibe where you were trying really hard, but you just kind of knew you weren't in the game. It was that kind of vibe. Like we weren't getting bites. And the more you don't get bites, the more you're like,
We're not right.
we're starting to question what we're doing, where we're going.
We're not right.
The water temperature was warmer than it was supposed to be. The water level was shallower than it was supposed to be.
Yep. All the things were wrong.
Everything was, and so we kept trying spots and trying spots. We even went down into the lake where Lake Hiwassee comes in, where the river and the lake kind of meet.
Tried to troll for them down there.
And everywhere we went, it seemed like it was going to be a desert.
It was brutal.
And then we finally went to one last spot.
Yep. Well, here was the key to me. We were doing that wade fishing, and we were not catching anything. And we went to one spot late in the day, and we didn't catch anything there. Well, I caught a yellow perch there.
Mm-hmm.
Caught a really nice yellow perch there.
Yep.
And the fellow fisherman that was across the bank from us caught 2 walleye within about, I don't know, a couple minutes, and then left. I was like, man, what are you doing? And we stayed there and fished, and we didn't catch anything.
I'm not the jealous sort.
But I was jealous.
I was a little jealous.
I was like, I would just like to touch that fish because I've had, hadn't seen one in North Carolina to behold, at least not one that I've caught.
It took me 10 hours to get here. We're on day 3.
Yeah.
We're trying to put this material together.
You were trying to shoot a TV show and a podcast and get all these things to work together, and it's just not working out. So we saw that guy do that, and to Don's credit, Don's like, okay, we should try this spot that's just downstream of here. Now, it was too late in the day to do that day, but he scheduled, this is like the 3rd or 4th day, he scheduled us to do that late in the day downstream of that spot. And lo and behold, there they were.
Oh, it was like mother's milk.
When the first one got reeled in, we were like, oh, yeah. Thank God.
So, pal, if you don't mind, explain why we were in the river fishing in the spring. Talk to us about what walleye are doing this time of year. Go from there.
Sure. So walleye are spring spawners and they're river spawners. So even though they live their whole life in the reservoir, when the mood strikes them and the moons are right, apparently, they head up the river to spawn in the river, and their eggs or larvae kind of trickle back down into the lake, and that's the cycle of life for walleye. So back on the wading subject, Don took me fishing probably 10 years ago in the Hiwassee River upstream of Hiwassee at night.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's what we were doing.
That's what we were doing.
That's what we were doing.
Yeah. And I have an entire career spent in the mountain region, in waders, on trout streams and everywhere else. And those are by far the slipperiest rocks I have ever encountered.
They are slick. I think you can be walking in calf deep water and the next minute you're not.
Yeah.
It's over your head. I mean, Don's like, bring a walking stick. I was like, we're fishing with a walking stick? He's like, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so, yeah, they are slick.
I had a broom handle, and I could not have survived without them.
One of the great things about the last spot, you could have gotten in the river there if you wanted to do that, but we could fish from the bank. So we were really bank fishing, maybe right in the edge of the river, but we were really bank fishing, and you could throw to most of the river from the spot that we were in. And so it wasn't as treacherous, but yeah, it was cool.
Oh, yeah. No, it was definitely, so we were fishing there, kind of spawn and run. We were kind of on the tail end of the run.
Yeah. You could tell it was towards the end. I don't think we caught a fish that I would have said had eggs ready to release. I think they were pretty much spawned out. They were on their way back to the lake. At least that's what it seemed like to me of the fish I saw. Didn't see any males running ripe or anything, anything of that nature going on of the fish that we caught.
Right. I mean, it should have been prime time, but because of the warm weather, everything was accelerated. So
yeah, that's right.
And that happens. We see that with coastal fish populations.
It happened across the state of North Carolina this year.
Sure.
I mean, from the mountains to the coast, everything was early.
Yep. The bass spawned early. Everything spawned
Everything
early.
was early, and everything was very quick because it was hot and dry. And so that generally makes it earlier and shortens it, generally, is what it does. And that's kind of what had happened to the walleye. So we were catching them in my opinion, we were catching fish that were coming back out of the river, going back down towards the reservoir.
Yeah, I'm sure that was true.
Yeah, and it made sense. I mean, with the low water and the hot water, really the place that we kept fishing holes, and really the holes weren't holding, so to speak, because of the low water. And really where we finally found the fish was in kind of one of the more larger holes there. So it kind of made sense that they were where they were once we found them.
And closer to the reservoir. Like we started kind of high and we slowly kind of worked our way down the Hiwassee River back down towards the reservoir. And it was closer to the reservoir. Those holes in that area is really kind of where we found them.
Yeah. And I mean, we were fishing the Hiwassee River and Hiwassee Lake one day, like I said, beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Beautiful rocky river, especially the upper parts that we saw. Some of the prettiest stretches of river that
I told Don he'd been holding out when we got to that very upper end spot that was above Murphy. I was like, man, this place is gorgeous.
Postcard.
Dude. Yeah, it was gorgeous.
That was neat. Corey caught a sucker up there.
Yeah. I found it was a silver red horse. I got that identified for me.
And see, my experience with Don was really different because we were wading all around the Hiwassee River in like shin deep water. And you could just almost walk all the way across the river in the area we were. And so you were looking for walleye in like 1 foot deep little pools, like in the kind of braided kind of flow structure. And then just like trying to provoke them to strike while not spooking them with your headlamp.
Yeah, he definitely said that about them. Like when they're in the spawn, you know, they get in really shallow water to spawn, and you can see them because their eyes are huge. What is that? The tympanum is that the name of it?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's right. The tympanum is the reflective part of their eye. It's like bright yellowish gold globes shining in the water when you shine a light at them. Now, when you do shine a light at them, you can spook them with the light, but you can clearly see their eyes in the water. I've done some electrofishing on them at night on Lake Gaston, and you see them long before you ever electrofish them. Like the lights from the boat that's shining down, you see the fish before you ever pop them with an electrofishing with the device. And, you know, Don talked about how you could, you know, put a bait out in front of them and kind of wiggle it out in front of them, and they would come up and strike it kind of thing, and they'd be in groups. We never saw that. That activity had kind of ended, in my opinion, and they were in holes. And Don's theory is, you know, they do come up a little shallower up in those runs to feed as they're moving down the river. And that's kind of where we caught them, is right at the top end of a deep pool, right where the run kind of comes into the pool. That's kind of where they were kind of focused.
The front half of the pool, I would say.
The front half of the pool, you know, leading up to the run, you know, right before it gets super shallow. That's kind of where those fish were. I keep saying we caught them. I did not catch one. I will bring that up, that I was not successful. I caught a largemouth and a sucker.
Right. Corey did a great job catching that largemouth and that sucker, and I think a crappie.
I did catch a crappie.
There
It was
you
a
go.
nice one. And a yellow perch.
Yeah. So he did really good at that. And so we were sitting there, and I mean, we'd bounced all over the place, and we were trying. I mean, we were to the point where we were about to give up. It was like, we're going to try one more time.
One more night. That's what we said. One more night. If this don't work, we're going home.
If this doesn't work, we're just going to, you know, cut our losses, and we'll have to find
Something else to talk about.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Something else to do. So, but we were out there, we were fishing, and we were, you know, it was last ditch effort. And then all of a sudden I catch one. And I'd heard from everybody that I've talked to about fishing for walleye around Hiwassee. They have said two things. They have said, you need this orange-bellied jerkbait, the 2-hooker one. This is the one they said you needed. So we got some of these.
Is that a cotton cordell?
Yes, it's a rattling rogue, super rogue. And then they also said a clown-colored Shad Rap. So I think I had a clown-colored Shad Rap on.
You did.
And all of a sudden, you know, I'm just chunking and a reeling. Also, because it was so low, you know, these baits that we bought to run in
6 foot of water.
6 to 8 foot of water were running in
3 foot.
3 to 4 foot of water. And so the lure tax was getting exorbitant.
It was pretty high. Yeah.
You know, we were bouncing off trees and logs, and we were losing stuff right regular.
Some we got back, some we did not.
But we finally caught one. And then we caught, I think, 3 or 4 that night.
Yes. It was bang, bang, bang.
Right. And I caught mine on this clown colored crankbait. And also this old guy this one came from way back in my bass fishing days. Only thing Don told me was they like orange. And so I saw this one. I said, well, at low light, that's orange. It should be able to find it. This is old CC shad from Cotton Cordell. This is about a size shad rat we were using, and you can see it has an orange belly as well. Also kind of a brownish orange crankbait with an orange belly as well was working too. You can also use these swim baits. We tried a lot of them, but the crankbaits and the jerk baits seem to be what we got our bites on.
Yeah, I'm not sure anybody caught anything on swim bait, even though I do know they work. Don has caught them consistently on that a lot. I don't remember us. I caught that yellow perch on that bait you just held up, that swim bait that you just held up, but I don't remember us catching a walleye on a non-crank or jerk bait.
Mm-hmm.
It had to have orange in it.
It seemed to be that way.
It seemed to be some form of orangish red had to be included in the crankbait color for it to be successful.
And the bites, it seemed like the bite window was really that kind of dusky dark,
Yep. And Don would tell you, if he was here, it seems to be an hour or so before sunset to maybe an hour and a half after sunset. Same with sunrise, an hour or so before sunrise. Once the sun hits the river, hits the water, it's pretty much done. So depending on where you are, when the sun angle gets right. We did follow up and fish the next morning in the same general area, caught more fish. And by the time that sun reached the bank, it wasn't on the water, but it was on the bank of the river, it was done. It was over. They were done feeding for the day, or feeding for that period of time.
And that was a little bit surprising to me because, I'm used to a morning bite, but normally my morning bite, if you're bass fishing, your morning bite can last till 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Or
longer. And
this was, especially because their eyes are so sensitive.
This was 7:45.
Their morning bite is a true, you can go fishing and still make it to breakfast before anybody else.
We started fishing at 5:30. We were done by 8 o'clock in the morning. It's quick. The window that we caught them in was very, very quick. And the sunset window was too. Once they started biting, we caught them, fairly, somebody was catching a fish every so often.
Right.
Except for me.
That is true.
And then about time it got really dark, it was done. Like when it was dark, no light visible, it was kind of over at that point.
And I think Powell could confirm this, or at least tell me I'm right or wrong. I would think in a higher water year, when there's more fish around, that window's probably wider, but it still probably tracks.
Yeah, I would say so.
That would be my guess too.
The thing about them biologically is they're fairly, I'm going to call them nocturnal. I don't know that they are nocturnal, but they got these massive eyes, and they have that tympanum that helps them bring in more light during those darker periods. So, they're feeding in that window. Now, I know, like, you go up to the Great Lakes, they're catching them in the noonday sun, but it's also in 60 foot of water.
Same here. Same in Fontana and Hiwassee particularly.
They're catching them
at depth.
At depth during the day, right? It's not necessarily a nighttime type thing.
That's right.
I think it's that you're in that shallower water, more light penetration. They don't particularly care for that, and they quit feeding because of that. That's my guess anyway.
To be honest, we see that in other species, maybe not at the same level. Stripers, reservoir stripers do better on an overcast day than they do on a bright sunshiny day, so.
Yeah, overcast day, they might be in 2 foot of water, and a bright sunny day, they're in 30 foot of water. That's just the way I think fish in general are, for sure. So Powell, tell us a little bit about a lot of the work that the Wildlife Commission is doing for this species in Hiwassee and other places for that matter.
Yeah. So, again, I'm in District 9, so everything north, south, and west of Asheville. And my district is really cool because we have these high elevation, really deep hydropower lakes. And so they sort of simulate more of a northern lake habitat, and they get that northern lake community. And also, walleye are native to District 9. So they were all throughout the Hiwassee River that you all were fishing, and the Little Tennessee, and they're extirpated now, but they were even in the French Broad River all the way up through Asheville. So we've got this kind of neat combination. And so we get these deep hydropower impoundments that were built, more recently. And so we have these northern lake walleye fisheries, kind of a neat deal. And it's kind of neat. It's always neat as a biologist to manage for a native sport fish, because so many of the ones that we deal with aren't. But it's like you feel like this is not just sport fish management.
This belongs here.
This is conservation, in a way. So our walleye populations have been very needy since I've been here. One of my first assignments was to analyze a bunch of gillnet data from Lake Hiwassee. And, when I looked at the distribution of the ages of the walleye we caught, there were none younger than age 5.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like,
that's bells and whistles going on.
I know that is like, fisheries population dynamics prepared me for this. I know exactly what I'm looking at. I'm looking at a species that stopped reproducing. And in Hiwassee, they stopped reproducing like exactly when blueback herring showed up in the lake. Like it was like a switch. And so that's just one example. But the truth is, over the last 20, 24 years, the walleye in all of our lakes have had trouble. And sometimes it's kind of really black and white, like in Lake Hiwassee, the bluebacks show up, the reproduction stops. And in other places, it's not. Like Lake Glenville's had blueback herring forever, and the walleye were fine there. But then they sort of started struggling just out of nowhere. And then in Lake James, I think the same deal. It's like seems to be closely associated with the river herring. So for whatever reasons, just throughout the area, everywhere that we have walleye fisheries now are dependent on stocking. And so our walleye management is stocking management at this point.
So do you see walleye in the rivers at all? I mean, outside of just the short runs they make out of the reservoirs, do you see them throughout the rivers? I mean, do you have riverine populations still, or are they gone? You said they were extirpated from the French Broad, so I understand that they don't exist in the French Broad anymore. But like, say the rivers that are flowing, like the Hiwassee, do they have walleye throughout the year?
They do. Usually not like a ton of them, but it seems to be that there's resident walleye that just always live in the rivers like they would have for thousands of years before we built the reservoirs. And so like you get odd catches of walleye in odd places on the Little Tennessee and in the Hiwassee, and anglers report catching the Valley River, which is a tributary to Lake Hiwassee. Anglers report catching them during the summer, kind of in odd places up through there too. So it's not like a fishery that gets a lot of effort because they're so rare.
Yeah, they're sporadic.
Yeah, incidental catches.
They're fishing for something else and they run across walleye.
Yeah, trout or smallmouth bass or whatever.
I got you. Interesting. I didn't know that.
So, at least on Lake Hiwassee, we'll stick there. But if we didn't stock the lake with walleye, sounds like the population would fade away. Is that accurate?
24 years ago when I started and looked at that data, that's what I would have told you. But when we started doing striper research out there, we caught, with gill nets, we started catching walleye just as incidental catches. And because we were marking them with oxytetracycline at the time, we were able to get a decent walleye sample. And when we went back and looked for OTC marks, we could see that occasionally, like maybe once out every 3 years, there would be a pulse of natural reproduction in the lake.
So the OTC is a chemical mark.
Yes. Sorry, I should have explained that.
No, it lays down on the bones, right? And then you can look at their bones under
a fluoroscope.
Yeah, special light, and you can say, I marked this fish.
Yeah. So in our hatchery, when we're just getting ready to send them out of the hatchery to get stocked, we soak them in water with oxytetracycline, and it leaves a stain on all their bones, which includes their otolith, which is this bone that we really care about because we can cut it in half and tell how old the fish are, like they lay rings down. Well, we can take the otolith after we cut it in half and shine it on a very complicated light that I don't understand called epifluorescence, and then it'll glow like if it's been exposed to oxytetracycline. So when we looked at all these otoliths from all these fish, we could see that fish of certain ages had a lot of fish that weren't marked with oxytetracycline, and that indicates that there were pulses of natural reproduction. And again, like it might happen once every 3 years or once every 4 years, but we're not without hope.
And you think that's probably just naturally what they do is probably every few years they have a good spawn and then the rest of the time they don't? Is that still occurring now?
That's a great question. they're river spawners, which is great, but that's a really bad place to try to spawn in because your fish and your eggs are vulnerable to whatever the weather does to you.
Yeah, you could have a drought.
You could have a drought or a flood. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it could be that, I mean, we don't have data going back past then. It could be that it was always like that. It was always hit and miss every few years.
Yeah.
But it was enough to keep the reservoirs populated.
That kind of holds true to a lot of riverine species. I mean, you think about coastal river striped bass, they're hit or miss. They have good years, they have bad years. The hope is you don't have string along a bunch of bad years, because when that happens, it can be detrimental to the population. But in general, they're not, we call it boom or bust. They're not, booming every year. And so I think that's fairly true of a riverine species, a riverine species to start with. I think that's probably what they're going to be like. Crappies are that way. They're boom or bust.
And a movie line that I've heard Ben quote before is from Jurassic Park, where Jeff Goldblum says, life finds a way. And so it's possible that there's, enough like genetic diversity in Hiwassee that even though a lot of fish have trouble when exposed to blueback herring, maybe some of them don't, and they have a different reproductive strategy or something, and that through time, those fish are sort of taking over and kind of handling it. So, I mean, you just don't know. It's kind of cool to see things like that show up.
So in the forward of this podcast, we talked about how there was a long window of fishing inactivity, and that gave me opportunities to talk to some locals about why we did it, because that's anytime there's questions, it's like, well, why you do it this way or why you do it that way? And one of the questions that we got was in terms of the stocking sites for the walleye. Walleye are hard to rear because they eat fish and they eat themselves really quick in the hatchery, because the big ones, the ones that grow a little bit faster than the little ones, will begin to eat the little ones. So we have to get them out of the hatchery relatively quick. That's one challenge. Then the next challenge is we have to stock them in a place where they'll do fairly well. How do we decide where to put these fish in a lake or in any system, really?
So that's a good question. In Lake Hiwassee, there is a ramp in Murphy that we call the TVA ramp, because it's owned by TVA, but the place that it's at is impounded in the summer, but the rest of the year it's just part of the river due to the extreme drawdowns in District 9. And it's always worked there, so we've never worried about it. And I remember one year, BR is a kind of guy I work with at the Balsam Depot, and he always does the stocking run. So he meets the hatchery truck somewhere and then gets in this case, the stripers coming, and he put them in there, and a bunch of bluegills came up and started eating the baby stripers when they went in. He's like, we should change the stocking. And I was like, no, don't change it. It's working. So it's working for stripers. The place we stock is working for walleye. Don't touch it, But in Lake James, they looked at this and they stocked, in this case, back to walleye in a couple different places, and they found that it really did matter. And so they shifted their stocking toward the places that were better, got better survival and recruitment. The reservoirs I have are tough because, Fontana is 10,000 acres, and it's 30 miles long, and it's got essentially 2 ramps. There's other places you can launch at it, but there's just not a lot of other places to do. And initially on Fontana, because of that ramp we used on Hiwassee, we were like, oh, we should put them up in the rivers because that simulates the natural deal. And so we stocked them upstream of the lake off our Needmore game lands, and they just didn't do very well. So we moved the stocking down to Lemons Branch, and it seems like it's making a difference.
That's great. Because their question was, well, what if you stocked them even further up the river? And I said, well, if you think about the fact that they're running up the river, they lay their eggs, and then the juveniles everything's working their way back to the lake. To me, I was like, I'd have to talk to Powell, but it doesn't make sense biologically to stock the fish way up the river if they're all swimming downstream anyway, eventually, And their question was, well, there's stripers and perch and, a myriad of different predators in the lake. And I was like, well, they're in the river too. So I'm glad that we're looking into that to try to make sure that our efforts are as successful as possible, because it doesn't matter what you stock. There's a significant loss, to predation, especially initially. So,
Well, as we know, but for those listening, stocking is a numbers game. It's about putting the right amount out there that will survive to produce a population, not being too low below that number so that you don't get a population, and not being too many that you're just wasting resources. People think, well, if you stock more, the population is going to be better. Not necessarily. In fact, I would say you're losing a lot of fish. And on top of that, like in Powell's case, if you're stocking in a fairly unproductive system, what are you stocking? We're talking about like striped bass. What are you stocking striped bass? 1 to the acre?
1 per acre in Hiwassee.
Okay, 1 to the acre. If you were to stock 20 to the acre, you're either going to lose them or the fish quality is going to go down.
Yeah, there's a sweet spot.
There's a sweet spot to that. So that's why we call it fish science. And the same with walleye. We've learned that about walleye. I'm going to talk out of turn. You're going to correct me. We were stocking, 5 fish to the acre or something like that.
That was the traditional
That was
rate.
the traditional number. That's kind of been the standard number for all these animals, it seems. But then the more we look into it, we're like, there's a sweet spot there. And that wasn't working. We weren't getting return back on our investment. Like we weren't getting a population. And then we upped the numbers to what? What's the numbers going in now?
Oh,
depending on the reservoir.
It's more variable now. We don't have like a set rate anymore.
But it depends on the reservoir. Like some reservoirs we're stocking really high rates. Some reservoirs kind of, and when I say high, we might be stocking 15, 20, 30 fish to the acre, something like that.
Yeah.
And then some reservoirs we're still stocking 5 fish to the acre because it's working.
Yeah. And Hiwassee is one of those. So we've really upped the stocking on like Lake James and Fontana because those are like very big, very traditional walleye fisheries. We've increased the stocking everywhere, but not as much on Hiwassee because what we've been doing there has been working. But in James and Fontana, what we were doing wasn't working as much.
Yeah, we weren't seeing a population return, and now we are.
So we're turning up the volume on the stocking.
Exactly. So there's not a one-size-fits-all, I guess is what I would say. Everybody thinks there kind of is, like, well, so-and-so's lake is getting this, and my lake's not. Why is my lake not getting it, And it's like, well, it's because this is working here, and that's working over there, but if we switched them, it probably wouldn't work in either spot.
Yeah, and these lakes had different walleye populations anyway. Like Fontana had a massive walleye population. I mean, one year when we were fishing gill nets a long time ago, we got like 20 walleye per net night.
That's pretty good.
Which is a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that was the peak.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But then some of the smaller lakes like Santitla, Glenville, and Nantahala, they've never grown that many. So when we're stocking those, we're not trying to make it Lake Fontana. We're just trying to maintain the fishery that was there traditionally. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That makes sense. A lot.
So given the fact that it's some natural reproduction that maybe help bolstering the numbers in Hiwassee, but also the fact that a lot of our walleye populations are, for the most part, hatchery supported, what is your take, pal, on should I or shouldn't I harvest a female fish?
My take is that you should feel free to harvest any walleye you want.
My kind of man.
Yes. Yeah.
As long as you're within the creel limit or the size limit, if there is one, because some places have a size limit.
Yeah. Generally, fisheries biologists, if you know, just don't have any problems with harvest at all. And we like people taking fish home and eating them. We think that's great. But in particular, in this case, because these fisheries are completely dependent on us growing fish and putting them in there, you shouldn't feel any obligation to let the fish go so it might reproduce, because it's probably not going to make much of a difference, because we just know that reproduction doesn't work very well right now for whatever reason.
So what I'm hearing, and maybe the take-home message there, and we talked about this on a previous podcast, and I said it very plainly, is one, if it's a legal fish to keep and you would like to keep it, you should not feel bad about doing that.
That's exactly how I feel about it.
The other side of that is if you want to turn it loose, you certainly can, especially if you don't have any intent to use it, So if it's a judgment call you can make, I think that's fine. But I think the other take-home message is we're going to replace that fish anyway. We, the Wildlife Commission, through our stocking, whether you harvest it or not, that fish is going to be replaced through the stocking no matter what.
Yeah, and in addition, like we're talking about catching walleye in the spring when they're very shallow, but for the vast majority of the year, people are fishing, they're jigging vertically in 60 feet of water. And one angler I've talked to says that he can get walleye to strike at 100 feet, but he doesn't have the technology to set the hook. Like there's too much stretch in the line and everything. So it's like a gear limitation for anglers. But these fish are coming up relatively rapidly from depth, and that's not good for survival once they're released.
You have to know what you're doing.
You definitely have to do.
You have to know how to fizz a fish and all that jazz, and even survival of that. The science is still iffy on that for sure.
So if you're letting the fish go and it has a high probability it's just going to die anyway, it could die in your frying pan.
Yeah, especially in the heat of the summertime when fish are stressed out anyway, that kind of thing.
Yeah, these fish are coming up through the thermocline from cold water up through to hot water. So it's something to really consider, Just because you let it go doesn't mean it's going to live. And just because it lives doesn't mean it's going to reproduce.
Yeah. I could go on and on about harvest. I would say don't shame anybody in what they're doing if they're doing it legally. And don't think you're not having an effect by releasing fish.
Yeah.
Truth.
You are having an effect.
Yes. Even if you're 100% catch and release
if you're
angler.
100% catch and release, you're having an effect on the population.
If you live in a place and don't fish, you're having an effect on that fish population.
If you're flushing toilets and washing cars, you have an effect. It's just the facts, folks. It's just part of it. It is all connected.
It's all connected.
What else about walleye? Was there anything else on your clipboard over there, pal, that we need to talk about?
Oh, I was just going to give a shout out to our hatcheries. So from when we started stocking them in like 2005 for like our most recent stockings until 2024, they were all produced at Table Rock Hatchery. And Table Rock Hatchery did a great job, and they've always done a great job, but they're limited by how many ponds they have to let the walleye grow up big enough so they can stock them. And more recently, and this is just a huge effort across the whole state, Table Rock has started spawning more walleye than they can put in ponds, and then shipping the fertilized eggs and larvae out to McKinney Lake and the Watha. Because walleye spawn very early, like they have some ponds that are sitting around waiting for what else they're going to do with them later. And so they had available pond space, even though they're very far away. And so now they're growing fingerling walleye and shipping them back to the mountain region also. So the amount of like juvenile walleye that we're growing or like larval walleye fingerlings has gone from about 300,000 a year at Table Rock for the last couple of years up to like 500,000. And so that's a huge win. And we're starting to see it really take effect. Like it's definitely helping on James. And we're starting to catch more fish on Fontana in our gill netting. And we're also getting reports of anglers that are starting just to see more and more walleye, which, Fontana's had it rough for about 2 decades for walleye fishing. So it's really starting to make a difference.
Yeah, it's nice to restore that back to what people remembered it being.
Yeah, we're not up to 20 fish a net night yet.
Yeah, well, you know what I'm saying? You're working in that direction.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's always a good thing. That's why we're here, right? That's why we do what we do. Well, I had a good time fishing, even though I didn't catch one, Ben.
I'm just glad that I had good waders and some good luck and didn't break anything but one of your rods while we were perch fishing.
Yeah, and I would tell you, look up Carolina All Out on YouTube, or I think they're on the Pursuit channel as well. Their season starts, I think, about the time this podcast comes out. And I don't know when the episode will be, but they have weekly episodes, and there'll be a walleye one. It'll be interesting. I don't even know how it looks. It's all pretty much nighttime under lights, and it's different for sure. It's a different show than we've shot with them before on other things. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. But we had a great time. Don was awesome. Can't thank Don LaTulip enough. He does have a guide service. I don't even know the name of it, but you can probably figure out there's probably not that many guides in Murphy, but he'll be glad to take you fishing. He's a super cool dude and a super nice guy. And
he helped us out immensely. So, and even brought us donuts.
Yeah, he's just a good human all the way around. So I can't say enough about Don. He's just a really good human, and I've enjoyed getting to know him over the past few years on these trips. So, time for questions?
It is time for questions.
I'm excited about them. Let's do it.
So, you guys send us questions every month. and we do our best to either answer it or farm it out.
Ben does more than I do, and I appreciate that about Ben.
Try to get y'all timely information. I mean, a lot of times, if I can, especially if I'm on the road, I've seen them. I'll just call the guy up and we've had a discussion, and it's been great. It helps me kind of stay connected and lets me do something that's fishy, which works out pretty well. And really enjoyed hearing y'all's questions, hearing about what's important to you, what you're concerned with, that kind of thing. So that's gone really well. I hope y'all keep sending us questions. First one's an easy one. 75-year-old, does he need a fishing license? He does. The easy thing is, for $19, he can buy one.
Forever.
And never do it again.
Never do it again.
So it's a bargain.
He's of that age, so to speak.
Is that the line, 75, or is it 70?
It's either 70 or 75.
I think it's 70.
I think it's 70. I think it used to be 65, and then they moved it to 70. People are living longer. So,
of the age to qualify for the senior lifetime license, it's a great deal.
Absolutely.
And you do it once, and you're good to go after that. So, and you can go to GoOutdoors.com, ncgooutdoors.com, and get.
I think it's Go Outdoors NC.
Go Outdoors NC.
I think that's what it is.
You can go to ncwildlife.gov and click on purchase a license, and it'll take you right there. So, our next question, Gastonia. Had family that lived there.
We won't hold that against them.
No, they're great.
Or the county.
So, my man he's got an 8-year-old son, doesn't have a boat, and he's looking for a couple good spots that he can fish in that area. I got him in touch with his local biologist, which we do all the time. If you send us and say, hey, I'd like to know about this area, I've sent Powell will vouch for that. I've sent many folks to Powell who have questions about his area. My advice is, wherever you live, you have two biologists that know an immense amount about the fisheries in your area.
And where to go.
And everybody likes to talk about the work they do. So call these folks up and ask them to tell them about what they do, and you'll learn all kinds of stuff. You'll learn stuff that you didn't even know about. So give these folks a call, get in touch with your local biologist, and you'll be amazed what you learn about the fishing in your area. Now, his question was...
Oh, I thought that was the question. That
no.
wasn't the question. I was ready to go.
And this question is going to get deep really quick. He doesn't have a boat, but he's interested in getting a boat. What is a good entry-level boat, and what does one need to catch fish? This could be its own podcast.
Oh, my word.
Multi-series podcast. Here's what I would say.
It's a year's worth of podcasting.
Here's my abbreviated advice. Buy the boat that's suited for the water that's closest to you, because you'll use that boat the most if it's suited for the water that's convenient for you to use. If you live in Raleigh, owning a 28-foot sport fisher, you probably won't use that much. But if you live in Raleigh...
But if you can afford a 28-foot sport fisher...
Call me, and I'll fish with you.
Kudos.
Yeah. But if you're looking to fish, aluminum boat that's modestly priced will give you the most days on the water if that's what's the suited for your area, And so that's my advice, is keep it as simple as possible. A used aluminum boat with a trustworthy motor and a trolling motor can get you a long, long way.
And don't be in a hurry to buy it. Shop around. There's a lot of boats on the market. Shop around, kind of get in them. If they'll let you drive them, drive them. But yeah, just don't be in a hurry. Don't be like, oh, I got to go do this and be spur of the moment.
Yeah, I tell everybody, if you decide you need a boat, it should be about a year-long process at minimum.
At minimum. Yeah, I agree with that. And I would also say, have extra money. just have.
You got to pay to play if you own a boat.
I mean, to quote Dave Ramsey, if you're a boat buyer, you have money to burn. Because I own a boat, so I know. I don't have money to burn, but I enjoy my boat, and I enjoy fishing out of my boat, and I have it for very specific reasons. But it does cost money to run it. It costs money to keep up with it. Make sure you're buying something that's got a good trailer underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't buy something that's got a bad trailer, because one, you'll be side the road. And Ben, you'll be side the road. And two, you'll be buying a new trailer.
So, just as an aside, I took Corey fishing one time, and
No. You didn't take me fishing.
we didn't make it to the ramp.
You didn't take me
We
fishing.
almost left my axle on the highway.
You called me and said, we got a problem.
Yeah.
And then we spent the next 3 hours trying to figure out how to get it off the
Yeah.
highway.
Yeah, I appreciate your help with that.
It was fine. I enjoyed it. It was an adventure with Ben, so it was good.
Yeah, I'm what you call hard on things.
Yeah, we've discussed that in the past. You are hard on things. And I will say, you will absolutely milk it till it's done.
We're going to get every nickel's worth out of it.
It's funny because a year prior to that trailer going out on you, you were like, yeah, I'm going to do some upgrades to the trailer. I mean, you polished it a little bit. You upgraded the bunks and the things. And I'm thinking, that ain't your problem. The problem is all the stuff that's underneath that you just put shiny new things on that you should have fixed. And it came and it cost you. I've never seen an axle delaminate from the trailer, but it occurred with you.
Yeah. Yeah, things happened. Things happened. And I saved up a little money, and now I have a nice trailer
You
again.
have a beautiful trailer. Your trailer is beautiful, but it did cost you a pretty penny to get it.
Your buddy Dave would not be happy with me right now.
Yeah. He's not my buddy, because if he was, I'd probably have more money.
I want to chime in on this boat question.
Yeah.
Just something specific. Like, I really believe that a 16-foot John boat is a really good fishing boat. It's just big enough to be really stable. If you're going out on just ponds and lakes, it's great. Like, you're not going to run 20 miles in it, but it's a really good, especially if you just wanted to get a boat to get in the game and see what you think.
I would agree that for the initial investment and versus the days you can use it versus the fun you have in it, it's probably the dollars to fun ratio is highest with that.
Return on investment. There's your ROI.
And you can do almost everything in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I would agree. It's good advice, Paul.
Okay. Mr. Patrick sent us an email. This is going to set us up for the next podcast. So
Good.
he wanted to reach out, let us know how much he appreciates the show, us having folks like Powell on, spreading their wealth of knowledge, because without Powell, we would just be running our mouth.
He's going to be our monthly winner.
Mm-hmm.
He said that he liked us.
Yeah. And he's relatively new to fishing, and he says listening to this has given him information that's provided him to let his fishing be more fulfilling. And he sent us a picture of your bread and butter fish that he's just caught on the Eno River,
The Roanoke bass.
the Roanoke bass.
The
And
good old red eye.
I responded back almost immediately.
He is our winner. I mean, like, he might win 2 months in a row. Just saying. He might be a double winner.
Wow.
He's talking about my fish, and he's talking about how much he likes the podcast. I mean, folks, that's how you get picked right there.
So randomly selected winner.
Randomly
According
selected
to
winner.
the chief here.
Randomly selected winner. This man is on it.
He's been fishing the Eno River and having some success, and he's been using a very small 1/12 of an ounce gold inline spinner, so a little bitty spinner,
Like a rooster tail. That works for sure.
and he's been catching some Roanoke bass, and he sent us a picture of a decent sized Roanoke bass. So
What was the question? Was there a question? Or are you just saying how much he liked us?
no, he was saying we're doing a good job
Oh,
and
no question.
sharing a fishing story with us.
Oh, that's nice. I love it.
I like it.
And shared a picture too?
That's right.
Awesome. What's his name?
Patrick,
Patrick. Well, Patrick, keep fishing for him. It's one of my favorite things to
stay
do.
after it and stay tuned, because we're talking about that in a month.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about that next month, so it'll be cool. Well, we'll make Patrick our winner. Chief executive decision. Patrick will be our winner for the month. Appreciate Patrick and everybody else that sends in questions and comments. You can get up with us at twoballbiologists@ncwildlife.gov. We will get to your questions, as Ben says, as quick as we possibly can. We try not to let them linger. We enjoy the questions, enjoy the comments. You can go to see us on YouTube now. We got video going now pretty strong. And so make comments about our videos and figure out if we're doing it right or doing it wrong. And we both know we're ugly, so you don't have to say that. Ben's kind of pretty, but, I know I'm ugly, so it's good.
We appreciate honesty.
We're well aware of how we look on camera. So thanks for those comments in advance.
So, I mean, And we're going to have to bid farewell to Powell.
I think so.
We'll never see him again on the podcast.
I mean, it's going to have to be a few years. I mean, he's been here too much.
We have milked D9 for all it's worth. We're going to move on to a different district.
We got to move on.
And try to get the same quality out of another district.
I will say I have really enjoyed getting to know the waters of and it's not all the waters. We just in one little spot, but getting to know that southwest corner of the state
It's a neat area.
Super cool. We talked about that on the Yellow Perch podcast and on other previous podcasts. It's just a super cool place, and you got a really great district, and it's the water there and the animals in it are really, really cool, and I enjoy being there.
I'm glad you love District 9 as much as I do, but I want to point out that you haven't even begun to explore all of District 9. So.
I understand that, Powell. Just let it ride, man. Just let it ride. I gave you kudos, and then you rain on my parade.
So I hope to see more visits in the future.
We will definitely go back to District 9. Probably a different spot, but we will definitely go back to District 9 at some point. But we appreciate y'all listening, and we will see you next month.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission's podcast, Better Fishing with Two Bald Biologists. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a positive review and share with your friends. If you have questions, you can email us at twobaldbiologists@ncwildlife.gov, or for more information, visit ncwildlife.gov. Until next time, stay safe and take somebody fishing.